Hey everybody, and welcome to the Rabbit Trail Podcast. This is episode number 138.
138.
138.
And we are the group of people that love to repeat ourselves a lot.
Yes.
And this is the podcast where we are going to chase the truth wherever it runs. And my name is Greg Harris, and I'm senior pastor at Olive Branch Community Church. Probably your senior pastor. Thank you guys for joining us today as we're going to be diving into something a little different. We're going to be going a different direction because it's a rabbit trail and you never know where the rabbits are going to run. But before we kind of announce where we're headed, my fellow rabbit chasers are going to introduce themselves.
Hello, my name is Stephen Oldham. I'm the local outreach pastor here at Olive Branch.
Hi, Stephen Oldham, the local outreach pastor.
Stephen Oldham.
And if you're listening to this at home, or if you're listening in your car on the way to work, let us know. But when you get home, make sure you don't drive and check. But give us a thumbs up, give us a like. If you're listening to us on the Spotify or any others, make sure you subscribe. But YouTube, if you're watching us and you're seeing this at home or in your car, some people use YouTube in their car.
No, they better not. That drives me crazy.
Well, as long as you don't watch it.
Yeah, like that doesn't happen. You know how many people I know have you noticed this? Like people don't go anymore when a red light turns green because everybody's
they're probably just texting.
Looking at their phone.
But if that's you and you still want you to subscribe to the podcast by hitting
we do
the thumbs up and the icon, just be safe.
I know. I will say we just got a car. And
one of the never had one before. They're really neat.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. One of the features on it is
wheels.
You know, if you are parked at a red light behind somebody, and then that car takes off,
it goes beep beep.
It dings at you.
Yeah, mine does too.
It's like that's kind of a cool feature.
Yeah.
Because now I can be on my phone.
I let the car behind me.
I do not play with my phone.
The car behind me has a horn. It does that for me.
I do not play with my phone
beep, beep.
when I'm in the car. So, and
who are you?
And when Nancy tries to communicate with me when I'm driving and she texts me, I'm always like, why text me? I'm not going to look at it till I get there.
Good, Brent.
Exactly,
good Brent.
Exactly. I'm a law-abiding citizen, people.
Yes.
So, but my name is Brent Branchard. I'm the Connections Pastor here at Olive Branch Church, and we would love to hear or read your questions and comments.
Yep.
And so again, they don't have to be specific. They don't have to be good questions. They don't even have to be related to the topics that we're discussing.
Sentences. At this point, we'll take anything.
Yes, we will. We haven't had a question in weeks. So
we had one last week.
We're feeling lonely. We're feeling unappreciated. So, we're pleading with you. Please give us some questions that we can discuss on your behalf. But again, any theological question, any life-related question, feel free to send them to rabbittrail@obcc.church, rabbittrail@obcc.church.
Boom. Now that you've repeated yourself,
Yes.
What is it that we are going to be talking about today?
Well, first, I got a joke. So,
I thought I could get away with it.
No. I live for bad jokes. So I came across this one. I thought it was cute.
I thought you lived for Jesus.
I do live for Jesus. I love Jesus.
Are you calling Jesus a bad joke?
Jesus. I love him. So
if you're still watching at home,
this is really going off the rails. But okay, here's the joke: is why do French people eat snails? Because they're aware that fast food is bad for you.
The rabbits are safe on this one.
Yes, they are. So do we have any first impressions, Stephen?
No, we have just good first impressions. They just said great show, and so that was cool.
Great show.
Right? That was the one about one of the ones about friendship that we just did. So that was,
all right. Was that one that I wasn't on?
I don't know. I'd have to check.
Wow.
I'm going to say yes, just because.
Just because it's mean. All right. So again, we are going into another good show, hopefully, one that I can participate in.
Great show.
It's the
greatest show ever.
And this is going to be
of all the shows ever made.
Yes, this is the greatest show. You've never seen a show like it. This could be a great show. We're kind of been getting a lot of feedback that they want us as voting is coming up in just a couple of weeks, kind of doing a political centric podcast. So we're going to take the week off from the sermon and kind of discuss politics, how we should approach politics, how we should view politics, and how we should participate in politics as believers in Christ. So, did you want to start off? Just kind of a 30,000...
I think the first thing that we want to make very clear is that we are three men who are none of us are poli-sci majors. None of us are here to admit that we know an excellent amount about politics in general. We are pastors. We do think about these issues from a theological position. We understand the complexities policy is trying to address, and that it's downstream from culture. There's a lot here that I just want to make sure that we all agree that we're not here to tell people, necessarily that, hey, we know exactly what's going on in the government out there and what you should do about it, right?
Yeah. Right. And we, like Greg said, we're not political science majors. The closest thing we have at this table would be Stephen, and that would be more of a political science fiction
major.
Yes. That'd be a great degree.
Yeah.
Political science fiction, baby.
Did Han Solo fire first? You know that? That's always a political question.
I've checked the footage. He did.
He did.
How do you know? Hey, I didn't create that footage.
They did later on. It changed it.
Yeah, they did.
They did change it. Again,
I was there in 70.
Part of the
77
stuff we're
when it was
dealing
on the
with
screen.
is what was true before has been morphed into not necessarily true anymore.
They've redacted our Star Wars history.
Revisionist history is even hitting science fiction.
I know. So,
but yeah. So
see, we have no idea about our politics. You're in trouble. So
we
warned you.
We're here to make things more convoluted and confusing for you. But
now, all that being said, I do think that as we start off, there's two sentiments that I kind of want to make, and one of them comes from my wife, and one of them comes from me. The first one, obviously, and I've said it from the stage, I've said it from the pulpit, I've said it in many different formats, is again that, regardless of who you vote for, regardless of who wins the election, regardless of what laws are passed, regardless of what goes on, as much as it may feel like, oh my gosh, it's the end of the world, or oh my gosh, we finally won and it's going to be, whatever it winds up being the results, the answer must always remind us that Christ is the King. He's the sovereign over all. He is the one who has all authority in heaven and on earth, the scripture says, and that all time and history is aimed at. So no matter who wins, no matter what pans out, no matter how politics falls in any country, in any place, it is all orchestrated by God in his power and in his sovereign knowledge and in his way to bring us to the point at which he desires, which is the return of his son Jesus, the destruction of all sin, the coming of the kingdom of God, the renewal of the earth in the resurrection, and therefore the elimination of sin fully and completely from the human existence and the earth's existence, and mankind and God living in perfect relational unity because of the work of Jesus Christ on the cross. If we don't start there in politics, you're putting your eggs in the wrong baskets. And I really, really say that. Second thing, and this is more from my wife, and she would appreciate me making it clear, even though I may not say it exactly as well as she said it to me, because she's very good at this kind of stuff. And that is, Tressa was very clear. She's like, listen, I really think we need to help people remember that our country is built on a relational communication. Like, we are not designed to have arguments online. We're not supposed to have our political shouting matches happen over a masked internet. No, if you have someone in your life that you disagree with, sit down, have the courage and the love to have the conversation. That's when we move political markers. That's when we find true understanding. That's when we engage at a level that is going to be more helpful, because the actual range of, and our locus of control, our locus of influence, let me put it in that term, our true locus of influence really is with the closest people around us, not with some potential bot online that you don't even realize whether or not you're arguing with somebody or an AI. I mean, really, you could be arguing with an AI at this point and you don't even know it. Better to sit down with a person across a cup of coffee or a nice drink or something and have a real conversation. What say you, my friends, in a real conversation across from me?
No, I agree. I think that politics years ago, and I used to run restaurants, and we would have political figures come in and like do these little town halls in our banquet rooms, and you could ask questions. And
these are like local politicians.
Local politicians, yeah. Sometimes they were congressmen too, but you would you could ask them questions and they would answer questions, and it gave you a better understanding sometimes, even if you didn't necessarily agree with their policies, it gave you a better understanding of why they were swayed that way. And I feel like political discourse is dead, I mean, it's almost like people just have speaking points and they just say it out there. There's no back and forth. And I think that is really important, and I have tried to have conversations with family members and whatnot too, is not just spewing what I believe and what I think they should believe, as much as having a conversation of, okay, why do you believe? To help them process and think through their positions and finding holes in their positions, but also for me to gain understanding as well. I am a firm believer that not just politics, but you should be able to jump the aisles and argue each side of the argument. Whether I believe in this or not, I should be able to argue for it, and I should also be able to jump on the other side and argue against it, because I feel like until you are able to do that, you don't have the fullness of understanding on that topic. You don't see the holes in your own thought, you don't see the biases in your own thought, and it helps you come up with better solutions. And even if you don't agree with things, like we'll get into this in a minute, but even like abortion, right? Obviously, as believers, and we believe that we're created in the image of God, we would pretty much have an understanding that we are all going to fall on the same line of where we stand with abortion. But listening to somebody who is pro-choice and their arguments against pro-life, you understand what the hurdles and the dilemmas are that pro-lifers have to face and answer, and come up with solutions to these problems in order to win them over, or at least come closer together. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I understand what thoughts. Like, do you agree? Like, it's not
agree.
really internet is something where to have the real strong interactions, or is it better person to person? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think anybody's political and ideological viewpoint should be one that they self-examine first, because a lot of times we, in our lives as human beings, just collect strong passions and ideas, some of which are valuable, some of which are based on personal anecdotal experience. And so when you're getting into something like politics or in the realm of philosophy or ideologies, you want to have a good grasp of what are your own biases and why, and what narratives that you've developed in your own life. And then the other question is, if you believe in certain things, and this is hard because as a Christian, I believe in something called objective truth. I also believe in something called goodness, what is good for me and for everyone. And any good philosophy means examining what I think is true and good, not just what I feel passionate about. And are they in alignment? And then how do I prioritize that? And then do I value persuasion over coercion? And to me, if you can already tell, we can have a really good, heartful conversation before we get to any politics, just debating that. Do you believe there's an agreement that we could come to, even if we disagree, that this is a valuable conversation to have on persuasion?
That is what I'm listening to a book by a guy named Yuval Levin. He's Jewish, but he's very, 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 very intelligent when it comes to our Constitution. He actually argues that's the power of what our Constitution's allowed us to
It's
have.
the philosophy
is the
what it's
ability
based
to sit down and listen to the minority or the majority viewpoints, and then try to come to a way that we both win, but in a way you're always going to both lose. And that's the only way that we as a society become powerful and robust and continue forward as a people. Because if we have to, like in many, because otherwise it all becomes coercion
and power,
and it's not, and that is the fastest way to a dictatorship. That is the fastest way to any form of government that destroys. And Jesus ceases to be king. And so we become the kind of people who literally have to enshrine into law, you shall have no other God but Yahweh, which, again, my perspective is, while that may be a law for Israel, and that may have been a law in that theocratic kingdom, and that is a law for the church, in the sense that no Christian should have any other God but Yahweh. Yes, absolutely. But what does that mean for the gospel then, and the art of persuasion, and the calling of people to Jesus? If they can't, if it's you put a gun to their head and tell them they have to believe in Jesus, you've just destroyed the gospel. This is why freedom of speech. This is why freedom of religion.
That's why helicopter parenting doesn't work either.
Right. You see it. This is why. Yeah, that's a great point. Microcosm is the family, right?
Well, you control the environment, but you're not persuading your children to your worldview. It's the same thing in any environment. Like, if you're yelling and screaming to get someone to back down, they're not changing their position. They're just moving away from you in proximity. They're not. And so the idea is, do you think you're winning by power? Because that's what you're saying. You're saying, if I yell and scream and I assault you with verbal assault on my ears or whatever, then somehow I've won a battle, and that's somehow how you take power. And you have to ask yourself, is that the means? And I've seen both parties do this, so it's not one party or the other. Is that the means by which I want to show my persuasion, even if I'm not persuading the person, because they're just not going to change? Everyone else is watching. They're watching how you interact, how you believe, how strongly you're able to articulate something. You can use emotion, but that's a bit manipulative. But is there certain grounding thoughts behind what you're saying? Is it based on a framework? Is it resonating with people? Why is it resonating?
So this goes back to those couple scriptures, right? Iron sharpens iron.
Yeah.
As and the idea that a wise man is going to seek understanding, but the fool choose on whatever they think is coming, whatever is true. So you want to say something.
So let me ask you, so why do you think that public discourse and conversation is dead? And it's easier to sit behind a computer on social media or whatever, like we have really become as a culture, spew out a couple of, points or, statements, right? And just throw it out there. You don't have to defend them. You can just throw them out there.
You're just presuming you're right.
Because you don't have to be that thoughtful, right? To just throw out a statement. Now, do you think that public discourse and conversations have died to a large degree because people are generally uninformed? And so they're afraid of a conversation. Like, a lot of times you talk to people who are Christians and they don't evangelize. And part of it, when you're talking to them of why, they're afraid they're going to be asked a question they can't answer, And so their confidence in evangelizing is compromised because they're afraid of the pushback and they don't know how to answer it properly. So do you feel like that also kind of transfers over to our lack of political conversation? Is we really are pretty uninformed people, for the most part, and we're afraid that they're going to have an argument that I can't, address.
It might be part of it.
Now we're getting into areas of just kind of speculating, which I'm totally fine with, but I just want to make sure that that's clear. But I have a theory that I've been trying to look into, and one is that the decentralization and the polarization of people has come as a result of the internet and the way in which we engage it, and I think it's affected both perspectives. Mm-hmm. So what happened is what the internet was doing in order to get people to see it more was to put stories forward that made you more algorithmically angry. So it didn't care what your political views were. It knew that if you were this side, this made you angry. So it popped up this story, and then this advertiser sold that story to you with this tag on it. So what this did is it made people get short bits of information that made them angry, and they kept clicking and clicking and clicking. So we have this knee-jerk reaction to the devices that we have that has caused us to have completely different kind of feedback loops and in the algorithm. So some people say this was more of a greediness in the way people are making money off the internet than it is political in some ways. But I do feel like I'm struggling against that even in my own personal life, that now that it doesn't care what your it does care now, but when it was first coming out, it was just click ad, click ad, click ad. Now people are starting to be able to manipulate the algorithms to get you to sway to one side or the other, depending on who you believe. But just know that it started a whole generation of people clicking on objects that got their attention, and that meant feeding into the negative or positive parts of their emotional experience. Now, this is why porn and other things are addictive, and I just know that it has driven our whole society to kind of, I need a fix from the internet.
One of the dirty secrets about, and it's not really a secret. People really know this. Not like I'm like, ooh, I got a dirty secret for you. Yeah. But look, media has known this for years, that death and the crazy and the horrible sells. You can't sell a book. You can't sell Eden.
It's always been this way. It's just never been this prolific.
But what it is then is that even the good stories have to be twisted somehow. You got to make a villain out of something. You got and that
a hero
that
or
feeds
a villain
into that gamification aspect. Yeah. The news has been like this for a long time, and the news became not about facts. It's never really. I mean, you can go back to the yellow papers, and the yellow papers, which were
yellow journalism.
Yeah, it was all about like just this idea of just salacious and
It's like William Hearst and and
this is not
Spanish
new.
War.
And to be honest, just because some people hid it under an objective veil, it was never objective. There's been this problem in human communications that the Bible's very honest and open about. That's why one of the reasons I trust the Bible the way that I do is it describes the heroes of the Bible as flawed human beings. It doesn't hide their flaws. It doesn't. The only person that comes across as smelling like a rose and perfect is Jesus. And so I don't expect to read my newspaper or meet a politician who is Jesus. Every politician is going to be flawed. Every single one is going to have somebody covering for them about something.
And they have the most temptations to do things because people are willing to pay them or get their favor or want their interest. And so it draws that out of you. Even some of the best of men are surrounded by people who want to take advantage of the power position that they hold. And that's a difficult temptation to push off. And the Bible's very clear. You see David have problems and others struggle in power positions. That's why I like the Bible. It does tell you how politics works. It tells you how humans have always tried to manipulate those in power, and that those that have done well in the Bible who with power position realize their power doesn't come from them. It's bestowed on them or given to them, or it's taken from someone else. And so if it's been given to you, it's considered a gift that needs to be used for people, and you should be a servant. And that's kind of the idea behind democracy, that you're supposed to be a public servant. I don't know if that's true anymore, because they expected normal everyday people, when they put the Constitution together, to fill these positions for a small period of time and then go back to regular society. But in the modern era, we've created the advent of what they call a career politician now. And so it's made it more difficult. But I do think the Constitution's strength is that it does recognize, and this is something you'll have to ask yourself if you're not a Christian, I think the Constitution is recognizing that people are inherently self-seeking. That's why it came up with the divisions of powers that it did, because it needed to do checks and balances, because innately people are out for their own interests. So it wanted people to have discussion about what is in the best interest of everyone, or what is my interest, and I'm going to tell you what my interest is, and we're going to talk about it. And it thought of that as being a part of the process because it looked at other positions of power throughout history. So for better, for worse, whatever you think about the founding fathers, they did consider some of these things in the way they presented the Constitution to us.
I like Proverbs. Proverbs has a lot of that good stuff about how politics works and these kinds of things. So those are kind of my opening salvos on the idea of politics, is that, again, I think we really ought to be people who are concerned to have face-to-face conversations, no matter how uncomfortable it is, even with family. We've gone through a generation where it's like, we don't talk about religion or politics kind of thing.
Well, now we yell at it.
And so now, it's sort of like there's this pent up I can say whatever I want, catharsis, but we've really, like, I think there's a portion of like, yeah, I think somewhat we're uninformed, but it's because we're only informed by the bits and pieces that we get, or we just don't want to be a part of it. So
or
we
you
don't look or
only
listen.
associate with people like yourself. I mean, everybody does this.
Somebody has told me, like, one of the problems that many people feel in politics and why it's so heated all the time is because many years ago, when there was a problem, it was in your town, and you could go deal with that problem. You could vote for somebody in your town to deal with that problem in your town. And now nobody really. Where do you get your local news from? Like, where do you get your local political thing? You have to, like, be an investigator yourself, because local newspapers have died. Local news has gone away. School boards are, like, doing stuff, and they have to publicly publish it, but you got to be paying attention, and all the work is now on the citizen. And the
Yeah, it's a lot of heavy lifting has been placed on the
It's
citizens.
sad when the most reliable newspaper is the National Enquirer, right?
Oh, yeah, no, don't do that. But I think what I'm just saying is that there's a lot of stress a lot of people feel about the weight of the federal government that honestly is a mist. It's a fake. The federal government actually can do some damage, but the power of the president is pretty narrow, and it's getting more and more limited. If Congress steps up, then it gets even more limited. Your congressman's more important than even your president, because they're supposed to be local. Your representative is supposed to be the powerful one for you, because he's supposed to go argue for you. It was all designed to limit this one person. He's not the dictator. He doesn't get to do whatever he wants. He's reined in by courts. He's reined in by Congress. Congress is reined in by courts. Courts are reined in by Congress. There's all of these checks and balances. And so sometimes we just need to go, the national political game sometimes is it's a game that is so large and so big that we have to get good at just what's in our face right here.
I do feel like the balance of power has shifted a bit in the executive position, with executive orders becoming more popular. But that's a side issue from the idea of how am I, as an individual in Corona, going to stop that, right?
And you're not.
I have a certain amount of power. What would be to vote a certain way, or to vote in a position that respects constitutional views. If you don't believe the Constitution is something that has a valuable philosophy, then you're going to seek to change it, and that would be a different worldview from mine. But that is a possibility for another person
but it's that lack of power that I think adds to the vociferousness online, like, because you feel
like you're persuading people.
I'm going to scream louder, and look, people, because they're scared of you, you're not persuading.
You're not.
You're actually coercing.
You're also talking to your friends most of the time.
Yeah. So
and it depends, unless you're on an X.
So I think some of it's what you're saying. I think some of it is this feedback loop. I think some of it is a feeling of powerlessness, and we're just going to shout about things, because it's easier to motivate somebody to get a response, and I want to be liked, or I want to get the response because it feels good. There's this mess out there.
That's what real quick, just let me add to the end of this, just to say that is the thing I was trying to say. It is good to evaluate what impact do I have as a citizen in the particular city that I live in, and maximize action, not just thoughts. So I think sharing emotional thoughts online, responding to the stimuli, has taken over the space that you would normally do when you'd go to your voter poll, or you would help your neighbor out, or talk to your friends. That's been more replaced with shouting online, more so than ever before. And I think what we need to do is get back to evaluating what personal impact responsibility can I have given my sphere of influence, and what's the best way to have those conversations, as opposed to shouting at everybody on your Facebook. Or nobody really uses Facebook past a certain age, but
or your Instagram feed, or
a lot of young people just stop talking about it in general, or they have heated debates, but then they just get mad and walk away.
Now I just want one more tech clarification. I am not saying that federal issues are not important. I do think that immigration has a local impact. I do think that when we don't work right with our foreign affairs, it has a local impact.
Sure.
I do think that the biggest pushing transgenderism or LGBTQ marriage and these things that people think are passé and done or whatever, divorce, those are more local and state. But some of these things, they have local impact. And so Title IX has a local impact. It has an impact on the school. It has an impact on particular families here in Corona who are in sports like crazy. I mean, that's a local issue. And so that's the kind of stuff that has to be addressed from the federal side. Now, and that's okay. And so I'm not ignoring that there are massive federal issues that have a local impact, but it's the local impact that's the critical thing. The federal government really should have very minimal local impact.
It should.
In comparison, it should be reining the state in, not and keeping us safe. But we can get into all that, I guess, if we want. So,
all right. So number one, I mean, God is sovereign, right? And Christ establishes, governments and he tears down governments, and everything at some point is going to usher in the return of Christ. We've been called to go and make disciples, share the gospel, make disciples, baptize them, teach them all the things that Christ has commanded us to do. So what is our role as believers in politics? I mean, should we be on mission primarily just to evangelize? Should we be very engaged in politics? What do you see the role as a Christian? And I know what I think, but I want to hear your opinion.
Well, I'll just give you, the ERLC published this earlier this year.
ERLC.
The
Evangelical.
It's the ethics, the Religious Liberty Coalition. It's basically the ethics arm of the Southern Baptists. Okay. And it published out a handbook, a political engagement handbook. And they asked that question, what is the overall goal of Christian political engagement? And their answer is pretty straightforward. They say basically, look, remembering that Christ is the King of Kings, Christians should pursue wisdom, justice, and righteousness for the sake of the earthly common good, with a view towards recognizing how God has ordered and preserved the world for our good and ultimately for his glory. So, to break that down, they're saying, look, we should be seeking out the common good for everybody. What is commonly good? And they've already gone through quite a bit of questions at this point. This is question 11. And they want to help you see, this is how God's ordered the world. And so, there are certain things that come before other things. And there's going to be a prescription to engagement. So we need to be fighting for those ordered things. That's why I do put abortion and I do put euthanasia at very high points in my political engagement. I do put the Title IX and transgenderism and the questions about male-female sexuality. I put that at a high place on my thing. I do put the protection of Americans as a sense of the love of your brotherhood, and you start with you start with your neighbors. Jesus didn't say, "You should love your brothers." Love your neighbor. Well, who are your neighbors? Your neighbors are at least, at minimum, those who are living near you, and so that would make your relations. So that would be a second tier level. So I would say primary ordered things are critical. Secondary ordered and humanity being made in the image of God is whatever is going to assault the image of God is the primaries for me.
Okay, so let me ask you this then. Okay, so abortion, that is a hot topic in our culture, and we should all, as believers, really fall in line, with the pro-life position in that sense that everyone is created in the image of God, and so there is a sanctity of life, whether it be, at conception or old age, like you were talking, euthanasia, right? So we should defend life, right? Because it is holy
inherently valuable
and inherently valuable,
infinitely.
And so I have had discussions politically with other believers, and I just remember this one conversation, in particular, where he is a believer, a strong Christian man, and I remember this was years ago. He was going to vote for a candidate that was absolutely pro-life, just diehard pro-life. And so he's like, and he is himself is very, very pro-life. Mm-hmm. And so he's just like, I can't vote for a politician who is partially pro-life, and part of it is like, okay, but this partially pro-life candidate has a chance to win. Your guy, absolutely, you're throwing your vote away, and so in that I was kind of like, I would rather vote for this guy who could possibly win and kind of move the needle rather than this guy who is all or nothing and he absolutely doesn't stand a chance to win. And so we argued it. And so I did, in one sense, I was frustrated, with the conversation. But in the other sense, I admired his tenacity for the position. So, what do you think about that? Where maybe the candidate that is more pro-life has some flaws in his position versus a guy that really has no flaws in his position, but he absolutely is not going to get anywhere on the political spectrum.
Oh, well, I guess my first blush in that answer would be I typically will vote for my strongest position when it comes to the selecting a candidate. So if it's an in-house Republican or Democratic process of choosing out who your candidate will be, I think you vote
like some kind of primary.
Yeah, a primary. You vote for your morals. You pick out the guy who's closest to your morals as possible, because what you're doing,
because we are a representative government,
right? What you're doing at that point is if you lose, you're going, okay, I've not persuaded enough people to my position. Because all a vote is a measurement of it. Are people persuaded to your position? And the answer is because if not enough people in your local area are persuaded of the position, then your local representative will not represent you. They'll represent the majority, not the minority. You are the minority position. In California, we are in the minority position when it comes to abortion. That is partially my fault because I don't work to persuade enough, right? It's partially my fault because I'm not willing to say, hey, look, I really think morally speaking, we should have a greater imagination. I'll get into that in a minute. If I lose the primary vote and the guy I have is going to be, he's partially pro-life and the other person is really pro-abortion, partially pro-abortion, I would go with the incrementalism of the partially pro-life person. I'd rather move the needle toward the direction that I believe in, and because then I give everybody a chance to agree. Because if you look at the stats and the polls, most Americans are not a pro-abortion to the point of birth. They're like 15 weeks. Like we're one of the most egregious extreme positions in the world when it comes to abortion as Americans, and people don't know that, but especially California, like we're compared to Europe, we're off the deep end. And the problem is that it's because we've given up on the moral imagination. I think that once I lose, I need to step back and go, okay, I need to help people have a moral imagination. The moral imagination we give people is, oh, those poor, can you believe this? This girl, she gets pregnant. Okay, regardless of whether she made the choice or not, it's like most people are like, when rape and incest, that's the problem. Well, here's a weird thought. They've done current studies to show that incest is like people who are doing these 21andMe kind of 23andMe kind of stuff. They're discovering that incest is like a massive amount of the population. Like, what are we telling people? Well, guess what? You were born out of incest. You're not wanted. You as a human being ought not to be here. You should have been aborted.
Incest?
It's huge.
Is it really?
Yes. It was ridiculous. It's based on Thinking Biblically podcast. Check it out. It's from Biola Tablet University. It was 3 weeks ago. And there's this study that came out, and it is just ridiculously high. And they like to the point, I think I can't quote you the numbers, but it was mind-blowing. And
I'd never heard that.
Yeah, and it's
historically speaking, it's been a big problem.
Yeah, I thought that was like a straw man argument.
No, but the straw man argument is to believe that these people should die, because of their history. And we've had people who have been amazing helpers and volunteers in our church who are born from rape. They were conceived in rape. And they were born as people who were conceived in incest, and they were born, and they've been part of our church community. Those people shouldn't be allowed to live. So let's get the moral imagination here, regardless of how the person is born. What if we could come up with a system? And I believe we could come up with a system where both the woman could continue in the journey of her life and go to college and find production, healing from the rape and healing from the incest and get free. And the child can also get to go to college and become a person who is invest in our society. Why can't we have a vision for both? Why does one need to be eliminated for the sake of the other? You don't have to do that. What we're calling for is a moral imagination. What does that system look like? How do we empower that system? Where do we go with that? That's not how we think of it. We say one's a problem and this person gets the right to go. No, that's a horrible moral imagination. And where I believe that pro-life has failed is to paint the picture of a moral imagination that is greater than the current situation. That, yeah, it's difficult. Yes, it's tough, but we could produce a system. We could produce a way forward for people to have both flourish. Couldn't we do that? Couldn't we? I think we have in churches. I think we see it. Churches have done that by caring both about the baby and caring about the person and doing the difficulty of walking with people. We've seen both flourish. And I think we could continue to do that. I think it's a lack of a moral imagination and an attempt to hide behind to make sin okay. Really is what it is. But I mean that's on my theological position on that. Stephen, take at it. You got a guy who's going to vote. What would you do with that scenario with the voting?
I think there are some argumentations that I'm not a single candidate voter or a single issue voter myself. I think very similar to Greg, I vote my complete and utter conscience in a primary because I'm looking for a candidate that most resembles my view. And then if they don't win, it does say that there's a persuasion problem on my part. The big dirty little secret to politics is we think the only way we participate in it is with voting. And that's not true. The majority of the way in which we participate in voting is persuasion and the articulation of your worldview to other people in a way that brings light and truth to the world. That should be true for Christianity in general, but also for just a good citizen. So to me, first you have to believe there's such a thing as I want to be a good citizen. And a good citizen is somebody who thinks about not just their own issues, but also everyone else's issues as well, and tries to think what is in the common good based on my belief system, right? So for me, it would be what is you're talking about abortion. It is to me a human rights issue. So if you believe it's a human right, the question is, when do you constitutionally get the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? When do you get that? And the argument is over.
At what point does the spark happen?
At what point are you a human? And if you don't know, then I would err on the side of caution, not on the side of ignorance. So to me, the argument I've made when I've discussed this with people is it is a human rights issue to me equal to that of slavery and civil rights in as so much as to me it's important. And so I'm going to fight for it as best I can. But if I only care about that one issue and I don't care about all the other things that are going on that cause death and the dignity of human rights to be evolving in our country too, then I do need to pick a battle sometimes, and things are going to get sacrificed. And I'm trying to bring about the greatest good, but I'm never going to stop fighting the war of persuasion.
You're not doing the thing of like, well, pro-life needs to be pro against the death of. You're like, no, pro-life is pro-life.
Yeah,
but then you have other battles as well.
Well, there's like euthanasia. There's pro-life. There's also just the fact that there are a lot of people that are homeless that are just walking around dying, and nobody seems to care about that. So there are other issues to concern yourself with, and then how do you deal with that? And then is it just nobody's problem or everybody's problem? Which in case nobody's doing anything. And so there are other issues that I'm looking for, but there's also issues that are kind of primed and ready at the and kind of birthed. There's like a moment where everyone is focused on this issue now. I've got everyone's attention. I probably need to address that issue if that's where everyone is. It's kind of like, it's not the only issue, but it's just in answering that question, I can tell people what I really think. Because I'm caring what everyone else is caring about, or at least I'm responding to what everyone else is caring about, and I have an articulate position. So if, say, the whole country's freaking out about something that really isn't that big of a deal, I still need to care. And I still need to understand why they think it's a big deal. I still need to persuade them that it isn't, or show them what really is a bigger deal, and have that conversation with them. And so in a party, you're supposed to have a little bit more of an exercise in the debate, because you're saying, here's what I'm bringing to the table. And if you keep ignoring this at some point, it will birth in a moment where I'm going to say, this is the key when everybody's focusing on it. I'm going to make a decision that this needs to take primacy and you've been ignoring this issue. But as of now, there are bigger issues going on. And so right now, I'm going to hold off on my opinion, but I'm still going to start to persuade you, and I'm going to persuade everyone else in my party and anyone else who will listen to me what I think is a true human rights issue. It's not going to stop for me. So if you want to engage in conversation, it's the best thing to do is engage it with your party. Have it with your party first, and have it with the people in your party, and persuade them as to why.
Your politicians out. You can
write them and go, look, I know you're voting for this reason, but I'm not going to forget this issue ever. And for some people, their conviction may be stronger on me. They may think the crisis is even greater, and those other crises I'm concerned about, they're not as great. And so I can agree to disagree in that sense, that we're both fighting for similar things, but your zeal or your evaluation of how to do that is maybe different from mine. So
okay. So what were you really thinking?
So, well, here's the thing. So, and correct me if I'm misspeaking, or
You're
redirect me if I'm getting too in the weeds on this. But okay, so the idea of during the primaries, I'm going to vote my conscience whether or not I think the guy stands a chance to win, and then then I have to deal with the real candidate later. But in California, right, for most of the outside of presidential elections, the top 2 vote getters go on the ballot. So, it's like for governor or
still
whatever.
writing a candidate?
It's not like a Republican and a Democrat that are going to run against each other in the finals of the thing, or senators or whatever. It's just like whoever gets the top 2 votes, Right. So if you're voting your conscience and pulling votes away from somebody that you might vote for if they were the candidate, you kind of lose that opportunity if the other side gets the top 2 votes, right? So again, do you still hold to the vote your conscience, knowing that chances are you're not going to have
So I think that
position.
So in that case where you're talking about a pragmatic turn in those cases, I do think that you're voting your conscience if you're going for the person that is more likely going to move the needle backwards, because that's really, there is no primary. It's not a primary anymore. A primary should be locked within the ideological zones that we should be fighting it out as Republicans. We don't do that in the state of California. I don't know why we're allowed to do this. It seems crazy to me that we're allowed to tell Democrats you can vote for Republicans, or
open primaries.
You break this all up. I would go back to in-house, no, we choose our candidate. You guys get lost. This isn't a democratic process. It's a democratic process whether you want our candidate or not. I'm okay with that kind of a thing. Let the parties work through their stuff, build their coalitions, bring out they think the best candidate. We're not. It's a broken system. I agree. In that case, we have to sit down and have serious conversations about who the person is that we think will move the needle in our direction the most. I'm an incrementalist. In my policies, I am an absolutist in my position. I am more absolutist in abortion than most people, because I believe in the imagination as being the primary power driver of change. So that I even believe that we should be trying to figure out how, even with an ectopic pregnancy, can you get that baby out and save the mother and the child and still have the baby survive? Because right now we can't. Right now the baby's going to die. You can't just pull it out. But what if we
could kill the mother? Yeah,
it could kill the mother. What if we had an imagination where we could actually move it and we could figure this out? So we figure out tons of crazy things in science. Because it's not a question, because it's not an attempt.
I think if you're attempting to save a mother's life and the baby dies, that's not an abortion.
No, that's not. Right. It's actually,
somehow this has been confused lately. To me, it's if I'm trying to save the mother's life and the baby dies as in the course, that was an unfortunate incident of saving the mother's life. Right. If I completely abort the baby had no chance. And
there's not going to be it's not going to interfere in the course of the mother's biological.
So this is a false concept and so out of the ones that may potentially die, I would like to see some creativity as to can't we save both of these, and then I'd like to hear some reasons on why a full-blown abortion, which is still sometimes requires a birth of some kind, is less damaging than actually giving birth to the child or trying to save the mom in the course of that and losing the child. So to me, some of these issues haven't been looked down to the details of things,
especially in situations where you've gone 9 months and the child's there. You could do a cesarean. Why not just give the child the chance? Anyway, I don't want to get into that.
But I'm just saying what I'm saying is oftentimes there's this philosophical narrative that we've been taught, and I think it is good to do some medical investigation, to talk to some people that are pro and anti-abortion in the medical profession, to educate yourself, because a lot of these scenarios that we keep repeating year after election year aren't always true on either side. And it's just I've always been told you just want to have these hanger abortions or whatever, and I'm when was the last time in human history that happened? And you find several cases of it somewhere. Okay, now what were the circumstances? Okay, well, that's not quite the same. And if it's 0.5%,
widespread.
Yeah, then we're talking about one issue dictating the majority.
Not to mention now there's chemical. And
you can do more harm in trying to overcompensate for a small minority of that overtakes the majority and cause more of an abuse to everyone else.
That your scenario creates the tension for a lot of Christians, especially in California, where you really do have to do your homework more, and you really do have to. There is a point at which I will bow out of a vote when it's two candidates. I do not believe either will move the needle in the direction of a moral, in a position that I believe is correct in any of my positions, which has happened quite often lately in the state of California.
I think you might have to take a prophetic position.
I have to abstain. I have to abstain because abstaining is a choice. I'm making a conscious choice, and don't think by not voting you're not making a choice. You are making a choice. You are making a choice of. Either of
the lesser of two evils was too evil.
Well, and there is no lesser of two evils when there's just two evils.
Right.
Well, sometimes the evil doesn't even come close to anything. You're just trying to figure out which one's doing the worst amount of damage. But sometimes the best way to win an argument is to say, I think both of you are going to do damage, and I'm going to step back and fight for something different than you two. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to do that vocally, or I'm going to participate in that and to show you. This is why writing in a candidate, is a valuable resource to let people know what you think. And you have to ask if I'm not going to sway this one way or another, what's the best way to make my case known? So that happens at times, especially more in California.
I think that there should be protest voting like that, where in California there should be a write-in.
I think
when there's two options that an entire swath of the population can't accept, you don't have to vote for them. You can write a third candidate, and if everybody would get on the same page about it, you'd have a different outcome. But again, this is all kind of the practice of politics, but in the practice of politics, ultimately, I believe there are going to be different convictions about this. So as you think through it, sometimes you're going to be convicted. You need to vote for the person you think is going to do the less damage. Sometimes you're going to vote. You think, I can't vote for you. If you are convicted in your study of the Word of God, if you are convicted in your prayer time and your conversation with wise Christian counsel, it's the same thing in any decision making in the will of God. And God convicts you to not vote, don't vote for that. Now, when I say don't vote, I mean for a specific person. We as good citizens should always engage in voting. We should engage in the voting of the issues. We should engage because we are called to be salt and light in this world. And that means, we got to get engaged. And that means to be a good citizen.
A good citizen is also informed.
Right.
So you have to get informed.
I will, I hate it, but there's times I go into the voting booth and I realize I didn't do my homework. And I have to skip it. I mean, now obviously I'm like the guy who's like no on all propositions all the time. Just like it's like I don't know what it means.
That's why they word them the way they do. No means yes.
Yeah.
You're like,
you
wait,
vote
what?
No, you've actually put it into law. Wait, what?
You vote no that they should not do the thing that they said they were going to do. And you're like,
it's like watching Shrek
double
with
negative
Pinocchio.
or triple?
I do not know whether or not he is or isn't going to be in the presence of the other person.
That's how a lot of these things are written.
Yeah, it's like, what in the world?
So I don't want to catch you too off guard here, but I would like to take a moment and just see how much of it you can recollect. But years ago, you and Kevin Kane did a political discussion, and it really was kind of what we're trying to do here to a certain degree is just bringing your biblical worldview into your politics. And you went through a process, and if I remember right, it was kind of like, how do you incorporate the Ten Commandments, or look at the Ten Commandments when it comes to issues and all those things. So if you could briefly summarize that, if you can, and then I've got a couple of questions that I think.
So, okay, I think the Ten Commandments are great to help you deal with your political positions, in the sense that the first 4 commandments, where it's talking about loving the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, right? So we've got, you shall have, worship only Yahweh, don't have any other God for me, don't make idols, and make sure that you obey the Sabbath.
Don't have any gods before me, like no politician is going to be the savior.
So, and I think that in those cases, they apply only when someone tries to establish a religion as a religion. At that point, if a government is making the attempt to tell you must worship another god and it's on the ballot, you're going to vote no, because there is no establishment of a religion of any kind, secular or otherwise,
or a counter ideology that goes against your worldview, which is
technically philosophically a religion.
We would say that, but for some reason that doesn't always get through.
Yeah, people like even the humanists originally said we are a religion, which because any philosophy that answers the question whether there's a God or not
there isn't is a religion.
They have a position about a supernatural. They have a position about how you live life. That's called religion, secular or not. It's a religion. So that being said, those first four are governing whether or not you should or can worship and taking God's name in vain. It's like, you can do it. Well, okay.
And that has a lot to do with the image of God.
Right. And so I believe that those pieces, the name in vain stuff, these are getting close to like, you're not gonna establish a religion. We're gonna keep the gospel free. We're gonna have freedom of speech because we need to let people obey that law from their own heart and their own will. It cannot be coerced. And I just think that's critical. Now, as it comes to like Sabbath law, things like that, it's like, look, what's best for the society? It's really more of that question. It's not, we have a weekend and that's going to be more of a policy level for a lot of people. Should that be a federal law? Should it not be a federal law? This is about holidays and these different kinds of things. Again, if you're going to force people to do stuff, you can't force people to worship God one day a week. It's just not okay. But I do think that you shouldn't be allowed to force someone to not take their Sabbath if it's
or
part of
to
their
participate in their religion.
Right, and I actually believe that legally
lack
speaking,
thereof.
if it's a religious holiday, if Good Friday's coming up and it is a Christian holiday, everybody, you can demand to have that day off from your employer. And I believe from what the law has said is that if they can accommodate you, they have to give it to you. Otherwise, they're violating your religious freedom. I think that's the beauty of how our government's set up because of those first commandments. Now, the other side of the commandments are love your neighbors yourself, starting with what? Actually, honor your father and your mother. This isn't an honor of authority. This is an honor of, I don't think you should have the right to destroy the family willy-nilly. It is defined in a certain way. I think family becomes a part of this. I think this is where abortion is critical because it's actually part of a definition of family. I think this is where marriage comes in. I think this is where the ideas of how you function a household, there's a lot of stuff built into that. And so as you're looking over laws, you have to ask yourself, a particular proposition that's out in the California right now, I think it's Prop 2 or something like that. It's like, no, this violates the commandments of what a family is, and honoring your father and your mother is a definition of family. It is a part of that. There's a critical aspect to that of now, should we be able to redress grievance and things like that against an authority? Absolutely, but do it in an honorable way. I don't think we should, while you have the right to, quote unquote, be dishonorable to your government, I don't think that it's wise. I think Christians
just because you have the right doesn't mean that it's right.
Right. Correct.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead.
The other thing I would think that if you're using the commandments of a rubric, you have to understand the philosophy behind Israelite, views on law.
It's not wooden literal.
It's not wooden literal. They're taking case studies and there's a philosophical underpinning to each of the 10 commandments and most of the Levitical law. And the idea is that there is a God. And so right there from the beginning, what we're saying is there's objective reality that's been established by a deity for us. Right. But even in the Constitution, they're recognizing there's an objective reality, even if you don't believe it's God or not. It has to come some outside of all of us, and all of us have to fall under its weight in order for us to argue towards the truth.
So again, if it comes down to, for example, the idea of you shall not murder, that would be the next one. Anything that's going to take the life of an innocent person is going to fall under that category.
You don't have human rights if you don't have that view.
And so that's why I'm against euthanasia. That's why I'm against you can't commit suicide and be I know people don't say you commit suicide, whatever. I'm sorry that I know that's kind of heartless. But the point is, in the law, it's self-murder. And so, but the government does have the right of the sword to bring to bear the death of somebody who does kill someone. In the case of the Bible, rape someone.
The Bible wouldn't call that murder.
They don't call that murder. They call that justified killing. Same thing in law and war. Justified killing is considered for self-defense, things like that. So these are case studies. These are the ways that they carve out this. This is not what we mean by murder. This is what we mean by murder. This is
it's very, very sophisticated law. I mean, most of our legal system is based on that system, and it goes back to not just that, but many ancient worlds trying to tackle these issues.
And so you can't just go with the Ten Commandments alone, but it helps to kind of look
philosophy,
at the rest of the law,
you can.
philosophy. So so you go to adultery, which again is really we shouldn't really endorse anything that just allows rampant sexuality. I don't think if you're gonna prostitution. I think we should I think because it destroys people. It's shown we've successfully shown that commandment, when we've just let it go, is actually very unhealthy. And destructive to a society, to the point we have freedom for pornography and sex with anybody, and now people aren't even having children. The actual sexual revolution has changed it to where nobody wants kids. And guess what that means? You don't have a society anymore.
Yeah, I mean, historically, the reason why no matter what culture you believed in worldwide, advocated for the value of some kind of family union with some kind of legal binding contract is because it was the strength of any particular country is based on its ability to produce children. And so the state has always had an interest in making sure children are being produced in order to have a state. And so the reason why we have certain incentives or whatever, the philosophy behind that is that if you're producing citizens, then you have a country. If you don't have a healthy production of citizens, you don't have a country. So then the question becomes, what is the healthiest way to produce citizens? Well, historically speaking, that's a father and a mother in an environment that is less dangerous and abiding by laws.
So, and this is why I'll just point out that the text does not say thou shalt not get a divorce. It actually says thou shalt not commit adultery. And most of the divorce arguments in the Bible are an attempt to say you cannot use divorce as a means of adultery, which was what the prohibitions in the Bible were about.
Yep.
Not to keep you from leaving an abusive husband, not to keep you from leaving somebody who's abandoned you. It was a covenant of marriage that was there. You weren't to break that if they went and slept with somebody else. They broke it. They broke it when they abandoned. Those are divorce laws in the Bible were created for the sake that if you fully cannot reconcile because of the hardness of somebody's heart, you have a out. It's okay, but it's not to be used to commit adultery. Next is stealing. This goes from everything from taxation all the way down to the idea of actually literally, do we punish people for stealing
from a store,
from Target?
Yeah.
And now you don't have Targets in certain areas because you can't stop somebody from stealing from you.
Because you don't want to hurt their individual right.
Or because kids think that this is a corporation, I want to take it down, so we're all going to steal from it. Or squatting in somebody's home, or not paying for your rent because you've lived there. This is all theft. Even down to, hey, I'm going to put a massive percentage on you poor people who are going to come get a payday lender loan from me. That's theft. It's evil. It's wrong. God hates, as he says, hates a balance that's not and right.
And the scales, yeah.
And so this all falls under stealing. And this is why the national debt needs to be an issue for people. Because add to two things. One, I love how the guy described, we talked about this beforehand, but I listened to a man who explained the national debt is like you going to a restaurant late at night and you're the last one to sit at the table. And when you get your bill, you get the bill for everyone who sat at the table the whole day because they just pushed it on. Now you're paying $500 for you or $750 for your one hamburger that you ordered, and you're like, "This is not fair."
That was a slow day in restaurant business.
Whatever. That's one table, right? So, but then we have less and less people being born.
We're producing less and less people,
and so now if only one person comes into the end of the day at the restaurant, and they get the bill for everybody throughout the whole day who has come to that restaurant at every table, and now you're paying tens of thousands of dollars for a burger. That's theft. We are stealing from the generations of the future to pay for our own pleasures and whims. that's illegal. That's bad. That's morally wrong. We should not vote. That's why I don't vote for bonds. That's why I don't think they're correct. I think you have to go like, look, use the money correctly that we've already allocated, and let's figure out a different system. Let's figure out a better way to do this. So this has a lot in my mind to do with other things, but bearing false witness to your neighbor, look, this can get into misinformation and stuff like that. But this is, again, a moral code. And do we outlaw that? Yeah, there are certain kinds of things you outlaw. You do not outlaw people to threaten. You don't outlaw certain there are certain modes of lying that are illegal. They call contracts. You can't lie on a contract. You can't just say, I've done this. You can't lie in court and bear a false witness. That's actually what it means. Whether you lie,
it is a court situation.
It's a court situation. Whether you lie in a normal setting or not, yeah, God's not going to like that. Sometimes it's
immoral, but it's not. It has nothing to do with the legal bearing on someone else. Right at that point,
but this is like literally is to do it so that somebody gets hurt and harmed. And that's the problem with misinformation.
Usually economically or outside otherwise.
Yeah, and when it comes to the internet, it's really the problem with lying is like I would say you're bearing false witness if you're forwarding a document you haven't backed up. Like if you're forwarding a narrative that you don't know, you're gossiping. That falls under this. If
that shouldn't be a law, but it should be immoral.
If you're forwarding somebody's edited video of a politician, you're like, look at us, thing. No. That is bearing false witness. You better be very careful with what you're pushing because God is going to hold you accountable to every word you say, Jesus said. That's a high standard, and it comes from do not bear false witness. And last is coveting. And this is just, the bottom line is this is the one that I don't think you can make illegal because this is
the heart condition
to the heart condition. It's to expose the heart condition, but it leads to why do you really want this law? And I think that is an excellent place to land. When you adjudicate your voting, you need to step back and go, I see that this is what it could do. Why do you really want that law, or why do you really not want that law? And if it's from a twisted motive, that tells you a lot more about what you want for your voting. If it's from a greedy, twisted, self-gaining issue, that's when you're really going to have to go, oh, I gotta hold my nose and vote for something I may not like, but is actually more moral. And I just think that people aren't willing to test themselves by the 10th commandment.
And I mean, the coveting thing too, that falls into the taxes too, just we should tax this group of people 80% of their total income.
Anytime we're caught into the equity conversation, right. I believe that you have to ask yourself, is this because you believe that people should literally have the same perfect outcomes because you want the same perfect outcome for yourself? You're jealous about somebody? Like, that's what the test does. The test of the 10th commandment tests your heart to the law. All the laws are already there. There's no other moral additions. This is about your heart in a society.
And it really does come down to like the coveting aspect of taxing the rich or whatever you want to do. But I remember being in a discussion with somebody and they were talking about and this was I think when Mitt Romney was running, so it was a ways back, and they kept talking about taxing the rich and taking up to 80% of the riches and blah blah blah, and he was like, yeah, I'm for that, and I'm like, why? Don't you think that's wrong to take 80% of money that somebody made and risked in order to, line your pockets? And they're like, well, no, they don't do that. Do you know how much they spend on this wedding? And I'm like, well, first of all, number one, what they make versus what you make, you spent more on your daughter's wedding than Mitt Romney spent on his daughter's wedding. I'm not defending Mitt Romney, by the way. And he's just like, well, there's no reason that somebody should make that much money. And I was like, well, you know what, though? There's going to come a point that they're at your doorstep. And they were like, well, no, I'm not rich. And I'm like, in some people's eyes, you are. Because if I said, let's go on a cruise next month, you could pay for a cruise to go next month. And some people would say, that's extravagant. You're too rich. We need to take from you now. And I said, it's always fine to bring the torch to everybody's doorstep. But when that torch gets to your door, all of a sudden you're like, no, that's not right. And I think that is where covetousness
Just ask
plays
Robespierre.
into our politics. We should want for others the same thing we want done to us. Right? That's a biblical principle.
Golden rule. Yeah. Go ahead, Stu.
Yeah, I think a lot of times we do, like I said before, we have to self-examine our motives for what we want. There are a lot of things that people demand as a right that I don't think that are rights. Do you have a right to A, B, or C? The question is, what are rights? But before you even get to your own personal rights, you need to ask, what is good? Not just for me, but what is good for everyone and me. And so to me, in order to be a good citizen of any particular country, you have to be informed and you have to be educated. You have to be willing to participate in public discourse in a respectful way, and you have to work for the common good. You have to be willing to get involved and care for people. And not just your own interests, but also the interests of others, in the sense that at least I can understand where you're coming from, even if I disagree, and then I'm going to continue to argue, and I'm going to advocate for my right. And at that point, you have to also leave some things up to the Lord to be like, I may be living in a world that votes evil because it chose to do that. And at that point, I've done everything I could in my hands before God to do that. I'm still going to advocate for the what I call the long game, which is advocating for the value and the need for Christ is vitally important to anything that we do in life. And so a large part of my energy being a good citizen is more persuading people the value of seeing why God's important and letting that God unravel a lot of the false thinkings that they do. And so I do want to spend more of my time praying for the salvation of that's being a good citizen to me, but also persuading them of the rich and robust worldview of Christianity that does involve politics for me. So I think that it's good to ask oneself, am I seeking the common good? Do I really think that even people I don't like, this would be good for them? And am I listening to see if that I might be misunderstanding or not understanding where they're coming from and how they got to that point? And am I trying to do that? At any point, we as a society, as a bunch of citizens, decide that's not good for us anymore, all that's left is the fighting. And so once you get to the point where I no longer care about persuasion, then you are only left with power. And then at that point, it is just a matter of who can take what they can with the power that they have. Yeah. And so I don't want that to be a society. So even treating your neighbor with love and respect is important, because I want to live in a society where that's true.
Now, I mean, we could talk all day. I mean, when we did this, and I was like, I don't know, this might be a short one, but I mean, I'm just looking at my notes going, oh my gosh, we could go on for days, because, just talking about, issues like, America being the world's police and citizens versus, but one of the questions I want to throw out there is this. I mean, one thing that really frustrates me from a political standpoint, is the lies, right? I mean, because lying should be illegal. I mean, it's illegal. No, it's illegal in advertising, right? I mean, if you're advertising a product, but if you're advertising a product, there is truth in advertising clauses where if you are completely lying about a product and what it can do, it can come back and really bite you, and there's lawsuits against it. So there is that truth in advertising, truth in lending. If you're a lender, you have to spell it out. You can't lie in those documents. But as politicians, they seem to lie a lot, both sides of the aisle. They lie. Things that have been already confirmed that this is bogus, this is not true. They continue to propagate that. And it just seems as though, number one, it should be illegal for politicians to really lie. And I know there's freedom of speech and all this stuff.
Go with you on that one.
But to propagate an outright lie that has been proven to be wrong should be illegal. And so part of where I'm going with this is because it's not, and they continue to lie and continue to propagate these falsehoods, how can we really find the truth? I mean, how do you go, okay, I mean, media to a large degree, we're understanding that they're not always truthful or forthright. We understand that both sides of the news cycles are biased in their presentations, but how can we cut through the information and find the truth?
Well, first of all, me and Stephen are going to both say, no way. Like, you don't outlaw lying. There are kinds of things that are contractual, like manipulation. There are certain things that are
There are rules in the book.
There are rules about what you're lying about.
Slander, fraud.
So that is not a question. There are rules about, and there are laws about lying. That a politician can lie. Look, the reason the politicians lie,
They got free speech.
is they get their free speech and they get away with it. Let's be honest. You're buying the liars.
That's why you have to be an educated citizen.
And so if you're going to purchase the liars, you're going to get liars. You know why?
Some people like to be liked.
Do you know why people like Bernie Sanders and RFK have like a buy-in by younger generations? Because no matter whether you agree with them or not, they come across politically on the very extremes in certain cases. They don't care. They just tell you where they're at.
Yeah.
They're not afraid to just go, yeah, this is where it is. And that's I believe that we are primed for a politician who's going to rise up and go, I don't care. This is my viewpoint. This is what I think. This is why I think it. And I know that doesn't sound like it's helpful to me. And I think people would be magnetized that person. I think that's what they think they're getting in certain candidates because their feedback loops are of that kind. But you can't actually deal with the lies of the grandest levels because you don't have the apparatus to
who's going to...
Like, what you need to do is stop concerning yourself about the lies and concern yourself about the actual published issues. That's why I like to go to like the Democrat or the Republican actual platforms that they are saying this is the platforms are voted on. This is their coalitional agreement together to stay as Republicans, stay as Democrats. This is what we say we will do. And there will be consequences. So they can't lie within their own party to each other because they would lose their votes. This is what they've all agreed on. Platforms are way more powerful to look at than politicians. Second is look at their voting history. It's all public. Look it up, examine it. That tells you at least what they're willing to risk their neck on. And if you find out this person's just not voting in the directions that you would ever want, regardless of what they say, look at actions, don't look at words. Look at actions, don't look at words. And the actions are available, publicly recorded out there for people. Now, you got to be a bit of a sleuth. To cut through that, I think the best way to do that is go to the way I like Tressa does it better than I do. She goes, we do not trust anybody who says they're objective. The second I hear that you think you're objective, I go, you don't know yourself. You're not being honest. Now, if you tell me you're a liberal news site,
but I object a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think that people have redefined objective as completely neutral, and I don't think that's true. I think what you're saying is I'm trying to be fair when you're being objective.
Right.
But most people have turned objective into I have no biases. Well, that's not
in
true.
order to be truly objective, you will declare your biases.
You're supposed to declare your biases.
Then you're being objective.
And then you compensate for your biases by saying, I've considered the other point of view. Here's my argument.
So that makes
you objective.
We want to look at a
liberal view
and a Republican or
on an issue,
a conservative view or whatever. You want to take in a couple views where they agree or where they line up. You're more likely at the truth,
or they're in collusion.
Right.
Either way, you need to know that. But also, this is why a worldview helps. If they're both on an issue on something, then you need to know if it lines up with your values in order to know if it's right or wrong.
Because regardless of whether it's a lie or not, if it doesn't line up with what you believe, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
One of the big things, what's the great things about being a Christian is, lie to me all you want. It doesn't persuade me from what I actually believe should be done.
Yeah.
If I know my faith, and that's why Christians, we've got to be discipled. We've got to know theology is not a game for the pastor. It is something every Christian should know and understand. You should be able to apply your faith to your workplace, to your politics, to your home life. You need to be able to do that. We try to do that in the sermons. We try to do that in our Love, Live, Share Keystones. We try to do that in the worldview stuff. We try to do that at this podcast. The goal is for you to not just have some knowledge and go play baseball. No, it's know how what you believe works with what you live. That's the only way to overcome a lie. And so a lie is just, it's going to be there. You can't even, and here's the reason why I'm opposed to making lies illegal, is because we don't have a government designed to dictate to people how their moral lives should be lived. We are designed to be a people who are living self-governed. We shouldn't have half the laws we have, because we can't enforce. How are you going to enforce a lying law?
Well, you don't have to worry about a lie if you know what the truth is. If we spend most of our time trying to prosecute lies,
and we're not talking about
we don't even know what the
truth of the moment. We're talking about the ultimate truth.
Yeah,
like God's in charge whether this lie is told or not.
Yeah, and some lies don't affect the common good, and so that I wouldn't want them to be prosecuted, just because some people lie to themselves and don't even know they're lying half the time. Some people think they've convinced themselves that they're true. So you don't have a court that's going to be able to adjudicate those things. So courts usually adjudicate things that affect the public interest, like fraud, perjury, some false advertising, like you were saying before.
So just to be clear, I think lying is wrong. You guys are cool with lying. I think that.
We're talking about the difference between
legal,
and morals. Like, I think morals.
That's an important point.
Wrong.
I think this is good for.
I'm kidding. I was just stating
but even though
objective truth.
But even then, it is true.
Can't do that with us.
but even though, like, I will say to a lot of people who favor conservatism, they often think they're going to persuade the moral changes in society by making a law, and it's just not going to happen. You can make 1 million moral laws, and no one's going to keep those laws.
It didn't work in Leviticus either.
That's what I'm saying. That's the point in Leviticus.
A change of heart. So, that's why the gospel is actually the first most important thing that we do. Not the saying that we're not supposed to vote. Not saying that we're not supposed to be political. The gospel has to change hearts.
I just say, if you're at the point of making a law to stop a moral problem, then you've passed the point of persuasion at that point, because now you're at the worst end of the problem. Before, you should be advocating for the moral good and the best of common good in society. When you make a law is when we fail. So I have to make this law. If everybody's doing good, we wouldn't have to make a law. And that's kind of the idea.
We wouldn't even have to think to make a law.
Yeah.
And we have always said you can never legislate morality.
Right. Well, you always legislate. You cannot legislate the heart.
Yeah. All morality is based on some system of belief system that is moral to the person who wrote it.
Holy cow. We go on.
Oh, yeah.
Well, this has probably prompted a lot more question than answers. If there's something that our audience specifically wants us to engage on, then I think they should ask that as a question so that we can engage it.
And you can do that.
Even
Rabbit Trail.
You got one more week, I think.
obcc.church.
No, I think this
is the last week before the election.
The election.
Well, we can still talk about it because there's going to be future elections.
Oh, yeah.
And we may not know who won by then either. We have no idea.
And I think you can keep voting even after the election. I'm just kidding.
Voting after you die. I'm kidding.
And I will say, we did, obviously I hope we did a good job of not being partisan in whatever we said, but also not being locked into this election that's coming up in, 2 years. But
trying to get you to think.
Trying to get some foundational things built into your political views that will carry you forward for every election till the Lord comes back.
Yeah, I think the only other pieces that we may want to talk about in the future is your view of government. What is its purpose? Is it and because some Christians have answered that, like for example, the guy who fought the abolitionist from England,
Wilberforce.
Wilberforce. I was like, William Wilberforce believed the government in a Christian nation should be used almost
like a parental,
as a father. It was called parentalism, and we, as a Republican society in America, believe the government should be limited and it should be left to moral forming societies, not the government, to do the good, the best good. And so it's a different vision of how to apply these things. And the question to me is which is shown to work now that we've been doing it for over 200 years. And that's really the thing. But Christians can disagree on what's that vision and where does it go. And so that's a part. We can't get into that now.
But the other thing we could talk about is the difference between a church's obligation or responsibility to certain issues in its community and the government, especially on the federal level.
Right.
So things like immigration look different, I think, in a church than they do for making laws or something like that.
And yeah, what's the difference between a moral hold and a political position or a policy making position? And then finally, like what are our expectations from politics? ultimately.
Where are you putting your faith?
I'll end with that.
How much faith do you have in politics?
Your expectation, because the election will happen and you're listening to this, and it's going to happen soon, you need to lower your expectations in the outcome. That we are not guaranteed.
Whatever it is.
Yeah, whatever it is. We're not guaranteed to fail completely, ever. And because God has guaranteed us that he's coming back. And we are guaranteed not to win with our politics every issue so that we bring in eternity. No, Christ brings in eternity. And we need to right size our expectations, which is, hey, win or lose, again, where we start is where we're going to end. Christ is sovereign. He's the king over it all. It's all going in the same direction, and it will land in the day in which he returns, resurrects us and the world.
And we were created to represent Christ, and even in the polling booths.
Yeah, and I would just say practice, whether you win or lose, you still need to practice persuasion of God's worldview, because that's the only way you're going to change hearts and minds. And so keep that in mind, because some people going to win and be like, we're done. And some people lose and be like, it's over. Like, it's always the same. You're always going to be engaged in persuasion as a Christian.
So there's a ton of questions you probably have. There's a ton of comments we're probably going to get from the shorts. We're going to have plenty of
Oh, man, I can't wait for the shorts.
And this is going to be super awesome. But if you have a question, whether formed well or not or whatever, if you have a comment, if you have some thought you want to share with us, and I'm sure there's plenty, let us know. We are open. We want to hear from you. Send them to rabbittrail@obcc.church. That's
rabbittrail@obcc.church.
And we hope that you guys have a great week. God bless you.
Boom, chakalaka.
Bye.